There is a story about a couple who were married for 30 years. And one evening, when the husband returned home from work, he found his wife was packing. And he asked, "What in the world are you doing?" And she said, "I can't handle it anymore. I'm tired of all the bickering that's going on, and you're arguing and you're complaining that's been going on between us all these years. I'm leaving." Whereupon the startled husband suddenly dashed to the bedroom, pulled out his suitcase, and he packed it up, and he took his belongings, ran after his wife, saying, "I can't handle it anymore either, so I'm leaving with you." The Old Testament book of Job, the first reading, talks about Job, and I think Job is saying, "I can't handle it anymore." And really, a lot of bad things happened to Job and his family. His children were killed in tragedy. He lost a lot of his property. He lost the animals, the farm. He lost his wealth and his reputation. And we can see why he would say, "I can't handle it anymore." And he was the one who said, "Curse the day that I was born." And at times he thought it'd be better off for him to be dead than to be going through this misery. He was angry that he was really constantly being victimized by people, by his friends, saying, "You must have done something very, very sinful that this is all happening to you." And so Job expresses himself. He says, "Life is drudgery, that his eyes will never see joy again, that he can but lament the bitterness of his soul." And yet we talk about the patience of Job. It doesn't seem like there was much patience there, but he came to that. In fact, he started to realize that he wasn't going to understand, why things were happening that were that bad and that painful, really, but that he would just have to have faith in God, to keep on. And so he did. So whether or not our lives are at the stage of Job, I don't know that yourself, but the thing is, there is a way to handle that. Pain and suffering comes into our lives, just as it did to Jesus. He went to the cross, and he suffered, and he died for us. But on the other side was new life, and Jesus promises that to us. So no matter how bad it is, no matter how much we say, "I can't handle it anymore," we have to come to the Lord, and we have to come to him in prayer. That's the way to come to the Lord. Turn ourselves over to him. Job was the one who said, and this is kind of sung at funerals at times, "Would that my words be inscribed in record with chisel and lead forever. I know that my Redeemer lives, and that he will stand forth on the dust, whom I shall see with my own eyes. From my own flesh I will see God, my inmost being consumed with longing for him." Like Job, then, we are all the victims of suffering and defeat, but we are also challenged by God to really go with Jesus to offer our prayers. Is not man's life on earth a drudgery? And is life on earth not a beautiful experience of God's gifts of life and love and compassion and forgiveness? The gospel talks about the apostles going to Peter's mother-in-law's house, and she was sick with a fever. And they told Jesus about her. And he went to her and he grabbed her by the hand, and she got out of bed and she was well. Jesus healed her. She was sick. Jesus healed her. And there are a couple other things about her. She knew that she was loved. And because she got out of bed to wait on them, she had a healthy mind. You see, that's where it's at, that we are not really narcissistic and all pity me. That when you have a healthy mind, we then look to caring for others in all events of life. They say in joking that Peter never forgave Jesus for healing his mother-in-law, but then that's another thing. So she was a healthy-minded person because she got up to wait on them. Maybe Jesus thought it'd be nice to have breakfast, and so on, and to get her out of bed. Well, the whole town was gathered around the door, and Jesus was healing people, and he was kind of tired, power gone out of him. And so Jesus was really going to preach the good news elsewhere. Well, I have a little story about a woman that had 10 children, and her husband was always on the road because he was a salesperson. And these were the wildest kids that ever landed on the earth. And the nun from the parish visited her and saw how things were going and how the children were so wild and so on. And she thought, well, there had a playpen that someone gave to her for anybody could use it in the parish. So the sister or the nun thought, well, she could really use a playpen. And so she brought that playpen. And a few weeks later, this mother met the parish visitor, the sister, and said, oh, you saved my life. It's so wonderful. At 3 o'clock every afternoon, I jump into the playpen and the children can't touch me. So like the poor harried mother, we need an out-of-the-way place, like Jesus said he needed, an out-of-the-way place for rest, for time to pray, to get things together. And that's where it's at, really. That's what we need. The world doesn't tell us that. The world tells us if we get over something, time heals and so on, and some friends helped you out and so on. Well, that's fine. But who gave those friends and who gave the time? And the Lord does that. The Lord is the one who heals. And he heals the brokenhearted, as the responsorial psalm tells us, the brokenhearted. So many of us learned years ago about our catechism at that time. We learned, what's the purpose of life? The purpose of life is to know God, to love him, and to serve him, and thereby have happiness in the next world. That's where it's at. When we feel like we can't handle it more, get back to that. Get to knowing God and how he cares and how he loves and how we should love him and serve him. And to serve him means that we have a healthy mind, that we're not looking at ourselves saying, poor me, pity me. So prayer is the key to wellness. God is first, and the rest is second, and both of them dovetail together, and that's what it is. There was a little boy who was saying his evening prayer, and his mother was listening to it, and he said, now I lay me down to sleep, I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, if I should die before I wake. And he got up and he started to run away. And his mother said, you know the rest of that prayer. You know the rest of that prayer. And he said, I got something to do before I say the rest of that prayer. So he went downstairs and she heard a lot of commotion and so on, and banging of drawers and so on. And kid came back up. Now he says, now I can say, that if I should die before I wake, I pray that you may take my soul to keep him. And he said, mother said, well, why did you do that? Well, he said, you know what happened? My brother Martin, all his toy dinosaurs and so on, I hid. And I thought, tomorrow, if I die tonight, he won't be able to find them, and he will be mad at me forever. So that's, give us, O Lord, the grace to work for the things we pray for. That is what we have to do. We pray for certain things, but we have to work for those too. We have to be open to the Lord. And the thing is, I can't handle it anymore. Sometimes we get into that drudgery. We become a slave of that drudgery because self-pity. That's not where it's at. Go to the Lord. Go to the compassionate one. Learn compassion. Learn forgiveness. That's where it's at. Rising early the next morning, Jesus went off to a lonely place in the desert, and there he was, absorbed in prayer. May we find ourselves that way many, many times, even throughout the day and every day.